I took a job in the desert a few years back. I was 32. I had been laid off from my office job and was desperate. When a guy offered me $10,000 in cash for a quick gig at a deserted mining facility in New Mexico, I jumped at it. I thought it would help get my life back on track. I set up my crew, just 4 of us. We started working under the unforgiving sun, and for a while, everything seemed normal. Frank, one of the guys, said he needed a smoke. I figured he'd be back soon, but time passed and he didn't come back. I thought maybe he lost track of time or was enjoying his break, but things felt too quiet. As the hours ticked on, more of the crew started making excuses to wander off. I didn't think much of it. Maybe they were just being lazy. I kept busy and glanced around, hoping to spot a familiar face. I thought I heard someone call my name once, but I dismissed it. The sun hung low, and shadows grew longer. It felt odd, but I told myself it was all in my head. After a while, panic started creeping in. I hadn't seen anyone for too long. I called out for Frank and the others. No answer. The heat of the desert closed in on me. I grabbed my flashlight and wandered around, the old machines squealing with the wind. I noticed some tools laying scattered across the ground, like they were dropped in a hurry. Then I saw something in the dirt. I bent down and noticed strange symbols carved into the sand. I didn't recognize them. They felt wrong. My stomach knotted up. I called out again, my voice shaking. Where was everyone? Were they playing a joke on me? But dread filled me as I realized the sun was setting and night was coming fast. I turned to head back to the truck when I heard a noise behind me. Footsteps. I thought maybe one of the crew had finally returned, but when I turned around, nobody was there. Panic hit me like a wave. The empty space seemed to stretch endlessly. I wanted to run, but I felt stuck. Was it the desert taking them, or something worse? I didn't know. I turned back to the direction of the truck, trying to shake off the fear. I stumbled as shadows danced around me, taunting me. I called out one last time. "Guys, where are you?" The only response was the wind rushing through the broken machines. I stood there, heart racing, feeling completely alone. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. All I could feel was the cold creeping in. Time was running out. I needed to get out of there. But as I turned again, I heard that noise. The footsteps were closer now. My breath caught in my throat. And in that moment, I knew I wouldn't be leaving alone. The darkness was waiting for me. I took off running toward the truck, the darkness looming behind me. I could still hear those footsteps, rhythmic and patient, like they were keeping pace with my fear. My chest was tight as I sprinted over the rocky ground. Each crunch underfoot sent a shiver down my spine. Reaching the truck, I fumbled with the door, fighting against the cold grip of dread wrapping around me. I leapt inside and slammed the door shut, locking it fast. I threw my flashlight beam around, looking for anything that might offer some glimpse of hope. The cabin felt so small and barren. Shadows closed in on me, and I knew I had to get out into the open. But part of me was terrified to move again. Behind the vehicle, the sound of footsteps had stopped. Silence dragged on. I leaned against the window and peered through the cracked glass. My heart raced. I scanned the area, searching for any sign of movement. Then it hit me. Frank's bright orange vest. I had seen it briefly by the old machines when I was wandering. I had to go back and see if he was hurt. If he was still here, I needed to help him, right? It was a terrible decision, but I couldn't just sit there alone. If I didn't act, I might never know what happened to my crew. I mustered every ounce of courage and turned off the truck lights, plunging the surroundings into darkness. Cautiously, I stepped out, hearing the faint crunch of gravel beneath my boots. I felt more exposed than ever, like a weightless feather tossed into the vastness of the desert. I took a breath and started moving back toward the machines. My flashlight flickered as I swung it ahead, hoping to find Frank. The symbols in the dirt caught my eye again, now barely visible under the absence of light. What were they? They gave me an unsettling feeling, a sense that I shouldn't be here, that something was terribly wrong. I shivered and pressed on. Then I spotted the orange vest, half buried in the sand near the machines. Relief washed over me, but the sight sent another wave of dread crashing in. Why was it just lying there? A red flag rose in my mind. I hurried over, heart pounding, and grabbed it. As I did, I felt something brush past me, cold and heavy. I turned quickly but found nothing there. An overwhelming wave of panic surged again. I spun around, ready to run, but that's when I heard a voice. "Help!" It was weak, almost muffled. My heart sank. It was Frank. Where was he? I strained to listen, but the voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. I had to find him. Then a thought struck me, colder than the darkness. What if it wasn't just Frank I was hearing? What if it was something else? I felt the shadows thicken, the silence grow heavier. I couldn't just stand there. I needed to make a choice. Before I could react, the ground beneath me shifted. I felt it, a trembling pulse that resonated through me. The call for help faded, merging into whispers that swirled through the night air. I froze as the desert began to respond. I couldn't stay. I took off, but I knew deep down, whatever was here didn't want me to leave. I sprinted away from the machines, my heart pounding in my chest, desperate for the safety of the truck. The oppressive silence around me felt alive, and those whispers lingered in the air like a bad aftertaste. With every step, I half expected something to leap out of the shadows. Then a sudden crash echoed behind me. I skidded to a halt and glanced back, paralyzed with fear. The old machines, had one of them just shifted? The moonlight barely broke through the thick cloud cover, but I could have sworn I saw a silhouette next to them. Panic surged again. "Frank!" I called out, knowing he wouldn't answer. The last thing I wanted was to stick around any longer. I turned back toward the truck and pushed myself into overdrive, running faster now. My footfalls sounded like thunder against the gravel. I could feel heat rising in my cheeks from the adrenaline, but fear pushed me forward. As I neared the truck, I suddenly stopped. Something had changed. The door I had locked was slightly ajar. My stomach dropped. Had I left it open? I was sure I had locked it tight. I approached cautiously, scanning for anything unusual, any sign that someone, or something, had been inside. The heartbeat of the desert pulsed around me, each rustle of the wind setting my nerves on edge. I shined my flashlight into the cab. That's when I saw it. A glint of metal caught the light. The passenger side was ajar, and resting on the seat was my pocket knife. I remembered taking it out earlier to cut some rations, a careless mistake. The knife wasn't just left behind, it was dropped, and the way it lay there told me that I hadn't left it in such disarray. Now, my mind raced. Had someone or something been in here? Had it taken Frank? I felt a prickly chill run down my spine, and I fought against the urge to scream. I couldn't stay out here any longer. The deep darkness felt like it was closing in around me. Just then, the whispering began again, more insistent this time. It slithered into my ears, filling my head with an uncomfortable sensation. Help. I recognized the voice. It was Frank, but it was layered with something else, something I couldn't quite grasp. It wasn't just fear. There was a pleading desperation wrapped around it, mingled with an echoing laugh that chilled me to the bone. With a sudden burst of fear, I turned and ran toward the machines again, the voice beckoning me closer, pulling me into that horrid darkness. I knew I shouldn't follow, but there was a pull I couldn't resist. I had to find Frank. I had to know what was happening to my crew. A flash of orange in the shadows caught my eye. It was Frank's vest again, lying just beyond the machine's silhouette, almost beckoning. My heart thudded against my ribcage at the thought of what it meant. I pushed myself forward, the night pressing in around me. But every step felt wrong, as if the ground had shifted beneath me once more. Then, unmistakably, I heard a low growl coming from the darkness. It reverberated through the ground, shaking me to my core. I stopped, rooted to the spot. Something was there with me. Something that didn't want me to find Frank. I felt a wave of dread wash over me. The growl resonated in my chest, a raw, primal sound that twisted my insides. I strained my ears but heard nothing except the anxious thumping of my own heart. Sweat trickled down my back, yet my limbs felt frozen. With great effort, I forced myself to move. If something was out there, I needed to see it. Gripping my flashlight tighter, I took a deep breath and stepped toward the machines. The shadows loomed larger with each passing moment. "Frank!" My call echoed in the stillness, but I barely recognized my own voice. I crept closer, my pulse quickening with every footfall. The air felt thicker here, heavier, as if it was pressing against me. I reached the first machine, its metal surface cold and unyielding. There was nothing. No sign of Frank, no clues. I edged around the rusting hulks until I spotted that flash of orange again. I pointed my beam at the vest, and relief mingled with fear. But it was crumpled and dirty, not on Frank. It was just discarded. My stomach twisted. Suddenly, the growl rose again, more insistent this time. It came from behind the largest machine, a hulking thing that loomed like a sentinel against the moonlight. I hesitated. Was that where Frank was? But what if something dangerous was lurking there too? As if on cue, something shifted, and my heart dropped. A massive shadow moved behind the machine, its outline twisting unnaturally. I held my breath. What was it? Frank? I tried once more, but my voice only wavered. I couldn't stay here. Yet something compelled me to press on. I had to know. I moved closer, my legs trembling. As I stepped around the machine, I braced myself for whatever I might find. My flashlight flickered, and in that split second, I saw it. A huge, dark form with glistening eyes staring back at me. Time seemed to freeze. I felt the air rush out of my lungs. It was a creature, at least a half-dozen feet tall, hunched and crouching, muscles tensed. My instinct screamed at me to run, but my feet felt glued to the ground. Then the creature lunged. I stumbled back, barely escaping its grasp as I turned to flee. My heart raced, pounding in my ears. I sprinted back toward the truck, fear fueling my flight. How had I ever thought I could help Frank? I should have turned back at the first whisper. Just as I reached the truck, something snagged my leg. I fell hard, my flashlight clattering away. Panic clawed at my throat. I rolled and kicked free, scrambling up just in time to see the creature emerging from the shadows. Its growl filled the air again, louder, more menacing. I dashed for the driver's side, yanking the door open. My fingers shook as I fumbled for the keys, feeling the cold sweat rolling down my back. That's when I spotted something flapping against the wind on the passenger seat, a piece of cloth. It was a torn fragment of Frank's shirt. My breath caught. If it was here, then where was he? The questions twisted like a knife, and I was out of time. The creature roared, and it was close, too close. I shoved the key into the ignition and turned with all my strength. The engine sputtered and roared to life, but I couldn't escape the nagging feeling that I was still being watched. I glanced into the darkness as I put the truck in gear, ready to speed away. But I had to find Frank. I had to uncover the truth behind what was happening in this damned desert. And as I collided with the gas pedal, the roar of the engine was eclipsed by the most terrifying sound yet. Frank's voice, echoing once more in that haunting whisper. Help! I barely processed Frank's voice before I slammed the gear shift into drive. The tires screeched as I took off down the gravel path, heart racing like a runaway train. I could still hear that growl rumbling from the dark, chasing me, taunting me. Help! It echoed in my mind like a dark chant. I couldn't abandon him. There had to be a way to pull him from whatever nightmare he was trapped in. I swerved past the hulking machines, their silhouettes melting away into the rearview mirror. The truck jostled over the uneven terrain, and I gripped the wheel tight, trying to calm my panicked thoughts. Where should I go? The way back was too dangerous. I needed more answers, and I needed help. I tore down the dirt road toward the only flickering light I saw in the distance, an old trailer. It stood amidst the emptiness, like a ghost of the past. Once, it was a crew's makeshift headquarters, maybe even a place where laughter rang over the clank of tools. Now, it felt cursed, an eerie reminder of what we'd lost. As I approached, my gut twisted. This was a bad idea. But if anyone could help me sort through the chaos, it would be Nora. She'd always had a sixth sense about things. I parked haphazardly, scrambling out of the truck. The door creaked loudly, and I instinctively glanced over my shoulder toward the dark. No sounds followed me, but that didn't ease my anxiety. I rushed to the door and knocked. "Nora, it's me!" I called, voice shaky. Silence loomed, thick and oppressive. I knocked again, harder this time. "Nora, please, open up!" Moments crawled by before the door creaked open. Nora's face filled the doorway, a mixture of confusion and concern. "What happened? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I think Frank is in trouble," I blurted out, realizing how frantic I must have seemed. "I heard his voice. He's out there, somewhere." I could barely form the words. "What do you mean you heard his voice?" she asked, studying me closely, her brow furrowed. "How do you know it was him?" I stepped closer and relayed everything, the growl, the creature, the torn shirt. Her expression shifted from confusion to alarm. "We need to get back out there," she said, her tone suddenly serious. "If Frank's in danger, we have to find him before it's too late." "What are we going to do?" I asked, fear threading through my words. "We can't just wander out there. That thing could be waiting for us." Nora glanced around, her eyes hardening with determination. "We'll take the truck and I'll grab my gear, but we need to be smart about it. Set up a light to lure it away." Just as we turned to prepare, a sharp sound from outside froze us both. It was unmissable. A deep, guttural growl, closer than before. The chill shot down my spine, and I glanced toward the shadows. The creature had followed me. I felt my heart sink as I inhaled sharply. "It's here." Before we had a chance to react, the trailer door rattled violently. Something was pushing against it. Nora stepped in front of me, eyes wide but fierce. "Get the truck ready. I'll hold it off." "No!" I shouted, panic surging. She couldn't face this alone. But as I turned to protest, I paused. The shadows shifted outside, and for a brief second, I saw two glimmering eyes staring back at me from the darkness. Then everything went dark. I gasped as the darkness swallowed me, the air suddenly thick and stifling. I blinked, trying to adjust, but the shadows swallowed the light from the trailer. Nora was still there, but her silhouette began to blur. "Get out!" she shouted, panic creeping into her voice. "Now!" I stumbled backward, my foot catching on a loose floorboard. I hit the ground hard, but the pain barely registered. I scrambled to my feet, seeing the door buckle and groan as something pounded against it. Then I heard a scream. It was unlike anything I'd ever heard before, raw and desperate, slicing through the cacophony. It sent waves of dread crashing over me. "Nora!" I yelled, adrenaline surging through me. I had to help her. I rushed toward the door just as it burst open, swinging off its hinges. The creature rushed in, filling the entrance like a shadowy wall. Massive, with matted fur and eyes that glinted like fireflies, it lunged forward. I shouted out of instinct, "Nora!" The creature turned, its gaze shifting to me. I froze, my body moving without permission as I stared into those eyes. The growl rumbled in its throat again, a dark promise of violence. "Go, now!" Nora yelled from behind me, her voice breaking the spell. I stumbled back, darting for the back window. I had no choice. I didn't want to leave her, but I couldn't sink into that darkness. I made a blind bolt toward the glass, knowing it was my only escape. The creature turned again, lunging. I dove, barely making it out as I crashed onto the ground outside. I rolled, instinct kicking in. I scrambled to my feet, heart racing like a freight train. The darkness surrounded me, but I could make out the glow of the trailer's light behind me, battling the darkness. "Get to the truck!" Nora's voice cut through the chaos. I could see her now, wrestling with the creature, arms flying as she fought back. I sprinted toward the truck, my instincts roaring to life. The engine was still running, and I hopped inside. My hands shook as I fumbled for the gear shift, desperately trying to put it into reverse. I glanced back at the trailer. Nora was putting up one hell of a fight. She had a wrench in hand, swinging it at the beast, but it didn't seem to care. It roared, a sound that shook me to my core. "Please, Nora!" I shouted, panic choking my throat. She caught my gaze, nodding as she dodged another swipe. I slammed the gear shift into reverse, the truck lurching backward. I had to do this. I couldn't just leave her. I could almost hear Frank's voice mixed with Nora's, calling for help, pleading for safety. But as I turned the wheel, my heart shattered. "No, no!" I cried, feeling the weight of impossibility. The creature snapped at her one last time before it broke off, focusing its attention on me. That's when I saw it, an open field on the other side of the trailer. Maybe I wasn't too late. Maybe there was a way to lure the creature away. I hit the gas, cringing as the truck barreled forward into the light of the trailer. But just then, I heard another growl, closer this time, a sound surfacing from the dark behind me. Something else was out there. I froze, fear clawing at my throat. There was no way this was happening. As I scanned the field, my heart sank deeper. I realized I wasn't just racing against the creature. There was something else in the shadows, something new, waiting to pounce. As the growl echoed around me, panic shot through me like lightning. I glanced around, searching for any sign of what was lurking in the dark. I caught glimpses of movement, shadows melting in and out of sight, shifting and coiling. I had to act fast. I slammed the truck into drive, heart pounding as I peeled out. Gravel kicked up behind me, the tires screeching against the rough surface. One of those creatures was behind me, chasing me. I could feel its breath, hot and vile against my back as I sped away. I didn't dare look back. My eyes were glued to the dirt road ahead, but I remembered Nora's voice. I couldn't abandon her. Desperation clawed at me. I had to find a way to get her out of there. Suddenly, the truck lurched as I hit a pothole, almost sending me sprawling against the door. I gripped the wheel tighter, trying to steady myself. In my mind, I mapped out a plan, a quick ride to the end of the field, then back to the trailer. Maybe I could distract the creature long enough for Nora to escape. But there was more movement in the shadows, more growls, a chorus of growls that set my teeth on edge. I cursed under my breath. This wasn't just one creature anymore. I was surrounded. I had to make a choice. As I drove forward, I focused on the field. Its vastness beckoned me, opportunity amidst terror. I wouldn't let them trap me here. I pressed the gas pedal down harder, the engine roaring like a beast itself. Then, without warning, a dark shape leapt in front of the truck. I swerved, panic surging again as I narrowly missed hitting it. My heart raced as I careened off the side of the road, tires skidding in the dirt. I struggled to control the truck, my breath hitching with every dip and roll I hit. I glanced back to the trailer. The chaos flickered in the light as the creature battled Nora, the other dark shapes writhing closer. Time expanded as my mind raced. I had to do something. It wasn't just my life at stake. It was hers. Spotting an old barn up ahead, a wild idea sparked in my mind. If I could lure the creatures there, perhaps it would give Nora a chance to escape. I slammed down the accelerator, burning up the field toward the barn. Everything went white noise around me, the only thought in my head. Just get to the barn, too. As I approached the weathered structure, my pulse quickened. I could see the barn's doors hanging off their hinges, just wide enough for a truck to fit through. I rolled inside, heart hammering as the sound of my engine echoed against the wooden walls, but the growls grew louder. I turned just in time to see dark shapes emerging from the shadows, their eyes glinting in the fading light. They weren't just gunning for me. They were instinctual, relentless. I thought of Nora, of her fierce spirit and determination. "I'll get you out," I bellowed, my voice steady despite the chaos. Then came the sobering realization. The shadows around me didn't just want one person. They wanted them all. As the first creature leapt into the barn, I felt that primal fear take hold. I wasn't safe anywhere. I had to act, and I had to act now. But before I could even move, a horrific roar shattered the air. Everything fell silent for a moment. My breath caught. Then a voice pulled from the darkness. "It's too late." I turned, heart dropping. It wasn't just the creatures I had to worry about anymore. Something more sinister was at play, ready to pounce. I spun around, eyes darting to find the source of that chilling voice. "Who's there?" I called out, but the silence swallowed my words. The air felt thick, heavy with an unseen weight. Then came another growl, low and guttural. It wasn't coming from the creatures that had been hunting me. It was something else entirely, a sound that rolled through the barn, reverberating in my bones. I stepped back, the wooden floor creaking under my weight. Suddenly, there was a flash, a flicker of movement. From the shadows, a figure emerged, half hidden by darkness, but fully present in menace. "You should have stayed away," it said, voice smooth yet dripping with malice. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I was frozen. The figure stepped into the light, revealing a face that twisted familiarity with something grotesque. It was Marcus, my former partner, someone I'd thought was dead, someone I had buried in my past. "I didn't expect to see you here, but I always knew you'd come back for her," he taunted, an unsettling grin creeping across his features. Panic coursed through me. "What have you done?" I shouted, fury mixing with fear. I refused to let him see how much I was rattled. Nora had never mentioned Marcus. If he was here now, it could only mean trouble. "You really don't know the half of it," he replied, eyes gleaming with delight. "These creatures? They're just the beginning. You're tangled in something bigger than you think." Before I could respond, the barn shook, a primal roar rumbling from somewhere deep within. My heart raced as the light flickered, casting eerie shadows. Marcus leaned closer, the grin widening. "Tell me, how far would you go to save her?" It was a trap, a game I didn't want to play, but I had no choice. I had to protect Nora. I couldn't let him manipulate me. I balled my fists, ready to confront him. "What do you want from me?" With a dramatic flair, Marcus waved his hand toward the back of the barn. "All of this, what you're about to witness. You either join me or fight against it. But let's be honest, I know you're too late to save her anyway." The growling intensified, and I could feel the heat of their breath, almost tangible in the darkness. I couldn't let fear steal my resolve. "You're lying," I shot back, but doubt gnawed at my confidence. Was I too late? Just then, the first creature slipped fully into the light, its form monstrous and grotesque, snapping its jaws. I stepped back, adrenaline pumping through me. I needed a distraction, something to buy me time. "Do you think those things listen to you?" I spat at Marcus, trying to buy a moment of clarity. He chuckled, his eyes dancing with malevolence. "Trust me, they won't be the only ones you have to worry about." In one swift motion, I turned and bolted for the barn door, heart pounding in my chest. My only thought was to escape and reach Nora before it was truly too late. But I felt a heavy presence close behind me, the night closing in like a trap. "Run if you must," Marcus called after me, his laughter echoing through the barn. "But you can't escape your fate." That's when I saw it. Nora's desperate figure flickering in the distance, caught between the chaos. Hope surged through me. I was still in this fight. But I didn't know how long I could keep running. I sprinted toward Nora, my muscles burning with the effort, but the barn seemed to widen and stretch, as if it were a living thing trying to swallow me whole. Shadows flickered around me, and the growls only grew louder, an orchestra of menace ringing in my ears. "Nora!" I shouted, my voice echoing against the wooden beams. Each step felt like it could be my last. I needed to reach her, to pull her away from whatever nightmare Marcus had unleashed. The creatures were nearly upon me, their silhouettes slashing through the dim light. One lunged forward, its elongated teeth snapping just inches from my leg. I dodged to the side, heart pounding, and kept my focus on Nora. She was closer now, her eyes wide with fear. As I neared her, I noticed her hands were bound, rope digging into her skin. "Help me," she cried, anguish in her voice. "Hold on, I'll get you out," I said, desperation flooding my words. I felt the adrenaline surge through me as I reached her, my fingers fumbling at the knots. I shot a glance over my shoulder. The creatures were regrouping, and Marcus was nowhere to be seen. "Marcus?" I whispered. Why wasn't he coming after me? The thought sent a chill through my spine. "Please, hurry," Nora urged, her voice shaking. Panic snapped my focus back to her as I fumbled with the ropes. "It's not safe here." Finally, I managed to loosen the bindings. She wriggled free, but a guttural roar echoed around us, drowning out my thoughts. I looked up just in time to see the lead creature, a hulking beast with matted fur and vicious claws, charging towards us. "Run!" I shouted, grabbing her hand. We bolted for the back of the barn, the light flickering as the beast barreled after us. I could see the exit ahead, but it was still too far away. "Do you trust me?" I gasped as we ran. She nodded vigorously, her fear mirrored in my own. We reached the door just as the creature snapped at our heels, its hot breath washing over us. I pushed the door open with all my strength, and we stumbled into the open night. The cool air hit my face like a dash of cold water, but I didn't allow myself to pause. I dragged us away from the barn, glancing back to catch a glimpse of the chaos behind us. The creatures were hesitating, confused by the sudden absence of prey. "Nora, we need to keep moving," I said, scanning the dark to find any trace of safety. "We can't let them regroup." But then, a blinding light pierced through the darkness. My heart sank. It was Marcus, standing on a hilltop, a sinister smile plastered on his face. "Did you really think you could get away?" His voice carried over the night, smooth and taunting. "You're just delaying the inevitable." I turned to Nora, panic lodged in my throat. "We have to go now." We sprinted forward, but doubt gnawed at my gut. Fate was closing in, and I had a sinking feeling that this was only the beginning. As we dashed into the underbrush, I caught one last look back at the barn. The shadows flitted, and for a fleeting moment, something else, something bigger than Marcus or the creatures, seemed to stir within the darkness. That's when I heard the growl again, closer this time, almost human. My heartbeat synced to the rhythm of our urgent footsteps as we pushed further into the unknown. We weren't safe yet, and the night was far from over. The moon hung high above us as we sprinted through the thick underbrush, branches slapping against my arms, desperation fueling my flight. Nora dashed beside me, breaths sharp with fear. We had made it out of the barn, but I could still feel the weight of that monstrous presence looming over us, its growl echoing ominously in the distance. "Which way?" Nora gasped between her hurried breaths. "We can't keep running blindly forever." I glanced back, hoping to catch a glimpse of the terror that had stalked us, but all I could see were the inky shadows creeping closer. "Just keep moving. There's a clearing up ahead." I pointed forward, adrenaline surging through me. But as we pushed deeper into the trees, I heard a sound that froze my heart, a chorus of growls surrounding us, overlapping, beckoning. The creatures were everywhere, and time was running out. "Where do we go?" she pleaded, panic lining her features. "Just trust me," I snapped, forcing myself to press on. "The truck should be close. We have to reach it." My voice trembled just a little. I couldn't let her see how terrified I was. As we neared the edge of the underbrush, the trees thinned out, revealing a large open area bathed in moonlight. For a fleeting moment, I let out a breath. A sense of hope surged in me, a chance to get to the truck, to escape. But then I stumbled into the clearing and skidded to a halt, horror piercing through the adrenaline. The truck was overturned, its chassis broken and wheels spinning uselessly. "What?" Nora's voice drifted off, disbelief coursing through her. "No, no, no!" I yelled, heart sinking. "It can't be!" I scanned the area, desperately searching for any sign of safety, but all I saw were shadows thickening all around us. The growling intensified, drowning out my racing thoughts. They were closing in, and I could feel the ground tremble beneath me as they advanced. "Run!" I shouted again, grabbing her wrist as I sprinted into the clearing, pushing us forward past the wreckage. We had to find another way, another chance. Just then, something flickered in the corner of my eye. I turned, breath halting in my throat. From behind the wrecked truck, a figure stepped forward, staggering. My heart dropped as I recognized Frank, the very man whose voice I had followed into the nightmare of this desert. "Help." He looked disoriented, eyes wide, clothes torn and stained, but his voice was tinged with something darker. "Help me." I felt a chill run through my bones. It was as if his words twisted in the air, morphing from plea to command. Nora squeezed my hand, confusion etched across her face. "Frank?" I called hesitantly, stepping closer. "What happened to you?" "Come closer, just a little more." He beckoned, but his tone shifted, becoming eerily edged, almost malicious. "I found a way out. Help us. We all need help." Panic surged through me again, sharper than the last. The growls roared nearer, their shadows deepening around us. Frank, was he truly there, or was this just a trap? "No, don't go near him," I shouted to Nora, fear wrapping around my chest like a vice. "It's not him. Something's wrong." But she hesitated, glancing between us and Frank, who stood swaying, something ancient and haunting emanating from him. The air felt electric, charged with the presence of whatever dark force had entered our world. "We need to run!" I yelled again, but Nora didn't move, the conflict between loyalty and instinct playing out in her wide eyes. "Help me!" Frank's voice rang louder, commanding now, echoing in the vastness of the desert. Suddenly, the growling peaked to a deafening climax, the shadows swirling tightly around us. I could feel the darkness coiling, hungry, and that primal urge to flee coursed through my veins. "Nora, please," I urged, pulling her away from Frank's haunting presence. But she didn't budge. "He's right here. We can't just leave him." In that moment, a realization pierced through the fog of confusion. I stepped back even further. "Nora, listen to me." I reached for my pocket knife, clutching it tightly in my fist. "We can't trust him. It's a trick." And then it happened in an instant. The growling broke into a cacophony of chaos as the creatures burst into the clearing, black shapes springing into view like demonic phantoms, ravenous for the essence of our desperation. "Run!" I screamed one last time, and in that moment, instinct took over. I grabbed Nora and pulled her away from Frank, sending us both sprinting in the opposite direction. We dashed into the dense underbrush again, branches tearing at my skin, but I wouldn't stop. Somehow, despite the fear, despite the relentless pressure of the shadows, we had to find a way out. We had to find the truth hidden in this chaos. Behind us, I could hear the roars and growls battling against the silence of the night, even as I could feel Frank's presence lingering at the edges of my mind. I didn't know what he had become, or if it was simply a reflection of the darkness that had taken root here. My heart pounded furiously in my chest as we ran deeper into the shadows, an unseen battle playing out all around us. The growling faded for a brief moment, thick silence absorbing my thoughts. But I knew they were not far behind. They wouldn't let us go easily. I glanced to Nora, fear etched into her features. "We'll make it," I promised, though I could barely convince myself. And then I turned sharply, the frantic need to escape urging me on. Just as the trees began to thin again, gleaming light broke through the darkness, a flicker in the vastness of the desert. Hope ignited within me, but the shadows loomed closer, and I couldn't help but wonder if it was too late for us both. "Together!" I called to Nora as we raced toward the light. But somewhere within me, the lingering question would haunt me. Was this the end, or merely the beginning of something even more terrible?